Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Alyssa. We are back in the old setup downstairs because, well, I can't leave the dogs alone. Jesus is broken in upstairs, and this is really the best place that I can film right now. It is a very gloomy day, so it works to film here. I'm getting attacked by pillows. I'm not used to filming here anymore. I feel like we used to film all of my videos here, and I haven't done that in a while, but kind of get used to it again. Anyway, we are here to discuss my notable reads from February 2022, so let's jump right into that. So if you haven't been watching the last couple of sort of wrap-up-y videos, and I apologize for all the stuff here, everything down here seems to creak and make noise, but anyway. If you haven't been watching my wrap-up videos lately, I've been focusing on only talking about like 6 notable reads each month, just to kind of condense what I'm talking about. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give you guys a running tally every month of how many books I've read for each month, plus how many I've read so far year to date, so we can keep track of that. My goal is 200 whatever. I seem to be reading a lot slower this year than I did in previous years. Whatever, I'm going to read as many books as I read, and that's really the end of it. If the ring light in my glasses is bothering you, I'm sorry, but my eyes were burning and I had to take out my contacts. These are my notable reads for February. This was a very long-winded and convoluted introduction. I apologize. I will get my thoughts together. Changing my scenery really makes me, or my setup really throws me off, apparently. So I have my handy-dandy iPad down here, and we're just going to go through it. So in February, I read a total of 14 books, which is not as good as I did the month before. However, I did read a lot more really big, chunky books this month. I didn't DNF anything, and so far I've read 32 books for 2022. I will say that one of the books that I did read, which is not going to be on this list, is Crescent City Book 2. I absolutely freaking loved that book, and if anybody wants to do like a discussion, I'm happy to do a live with whoever wants to discuss the book. I feel like we've all talked about it. It's not going to be included in this wrap-up other than me saying I absolutely loved it. Yes, I did read it. It's fantastic. It threw me off from reading a few other things this month because I devoted all that time to that book instead, and of course, in true Sarah J. Maas fashion, it's enormous, but loved it. No complaints from me here. Absolutely adored it. The first couple books here we talked about when I talked about my Shop My Shelves, my TBR building video back in the beginning of February, and I guess we'll just dive right into those because I had already completed them at the time. And so the first book is going to be Olga to, oh, where did I write it out? Oh, I think I wrote it out. I wrote it out phonetically for myself, but it's Olga T, because I can't say this name. It's like Chakutuk, Kartuk, something like that. Ah, I hate it. Hate that I can't say words. Anyway, so it's Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead, and this is the Australian edition, which you know I bought because Sighthounds. And so this is kind of like it's sort of like a literary thriller. That's probably my best way to describe it. And there's this kind of grumpy old lady, and they're in this small Polish town, and people keep dying, like all these men. She's a vegetarian. She's very against hunting and killing of animals, and all these people start dying, and mystery ensues. It is so beautifully written. It's very engaging. It's the humor is very dark and dry, and I loved it. I totally agree with all of the main characters' motivations and actions in this book, and I highly recommend that. I could not recommend this more. I also read her book Flights this past month in February, and I did like Flights quite a bit. I thought it was a very interesting narrative, very literary fiction, very non-traditional format of a story. It was interesting, but this book has my heart because this is more like a traditionally written story. It's much more easy to engage with. I obviously tabbed the shit out of it. There's so many lines in here where our main character just makes these very darkly humorous commentaries on life. It was phenomenal, and I highly recommend it to anybody who hasn't already read her. I think Flights is something that maybe if you don't like really, really literary fiction, maybe don't read that. But if you like kind of cold, isolated mystery thriller, this is sort of right up your alley. Next up was Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. Murata, where are you going, little lady? She's never seen the filming setup, so she's a little intrigued right now. Let me show you guys what's happening off camera. Because like this is what's happening off camera. Hey, Mercy, you've never seen all of this equipment, right? She's a little devil. I'm surprised she hasn't tried to eat the microphone. The old man's just sleeping there. Anyway, so what was I saying? So, convenience store woman. So this is a fantastic story. I already talked about this in my Shop Your Shelves, and it is translated from the Japanese, and it's a novella about this girl who doesn't really fit in with anybody else. She may or may not have some sort of like Asperger's, or she's on the spectrum somewhere, and she works in this convenience store. And she's very happy being single, and she's very happy with her life in the convenience store, and she's sort of like a master of the convenience store. She knows exactly what needs to be done and to make the convenience store really thrive. And then the pressures of the outside world sort of get to her. So her family and friends all start giving her pressure about like, why is she single? Why is she doing this job? Why doesn't she do better for herself? Blah, 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 blah. And she starts to bow to those pressures. She gets a boyfriend of convenience and all these things, and you see her try to live more conventionally and go against her own self and how that plays out. And I just thought it was a really phenomenal book, and really covers a lot in a very short period of time about being yourself, about not kowtowing to the pressures of society, about, you know, how happiness can look different for everybody. And it was just a really beautiful book that I listened to on audio, and I would like to get a hard copy for my collection of translated works. One day I will go ahead and do that, but not today, because bills. The third book I wanted to highlight from this month was an absolutely hilarious and dark read. It's kind of like, I feel like the main character from this and the main character from the next book would be really good friends. And it's a collection of short mystery sort of stories, and it's An Elderly Lady is Up to No Good, and that is written by Helene Tursten, and it's translated, I believe, from Norwegian or Swedish. So you have this elderly lady living in this, she's 88 years old. She lives in this apartment building in Sweden, and basically the first story outlines it where like her parents died and they didn't really have any money, but they had this building, and the way the will worked is that the daughters got to live in their apartment until they both died, and they didn't have to pay rent, they didn't have to do anything, but otherwise like they lost ownership of the building, like all this stuff. So she has housing for the foreseeable future, and she has sort of like the best apartment in the building. Obviously the landlords would love to kick her out, so she has this sort of ongoing battle with the landlords over her space. And there's this series of stories where she sort of she kind of murders people in like a justifiable way, and it's funny and fantastic, and it's kind of fun to see once you get through the first story. And like, this isn't a spoiler that she kills people, like it's sort of in the title that she's up to no good. So yeah, guess what? That no good is murdering people. She murders. And yeah, so she's sort of like a serial killer, and it's kind of fun to watch, to read these stories and see like who and how she is going to murder the next person and why. Because sometimes she's very justified in murdering the person she has murdered. So it is a blast. There is a second collection that is out, and I'm waiting till I have some more library holds from New York Public Library, because they have it there and I only get 3 and I've used all of my holds up. New York Public Library, please give me more holds. But once I have a hold, I want to put a hold on the second book, which is An Elderly Lady Must Not Be Crossed. It is honestly like such a fun time. If you are just looking for a fun collection of stories that are really well written and engaging, I really highly suggest An Elderly Lady is Up to No Good by Helene Tursten. And I actually have the next 3 books, and I'm really excited to talk to you guys about them. I'm not going to go too far in depth on this next one because we will be having a podcast episode like dedicated to it. But I read the Love Songs of WBD Du Bois for the finally. This is by Honorée Fanon Jeffers, and this is her first novel, full-length novel. I believe everything else she's had published is all poetry and essays, but this is her first like full-length fiction novel. And like I said, I'm not going to go too far in depth in it because Naomi and I do break this down on the podcast in an upcoming episode, but this book is phenomenal. I know that everybody has heard a lot of really good things and there's a lot of hype about it. It is worth all of the hype. She does this fantastic job of weaving the narratives between more present day, the now, and the then of not exactly pre-slavery, but like the introduction of slavery to they're in Georgia. Yes. So it's like the story starts basically like with the native peoples living on this land in Chickasetta, Georgia. And it sort of weaves between the beginning of the white settlers coming in and taking over that land and slaves coming in with, as slavery takes off in that area, and then how the descendants of those peoples, all of those peoples, are living their lives today, how they've managed through life, all these different challenges that each group of people is facing, and it is just so beautifully done. It is moving and poignant and scarily long, but it moves. Like, it absolutely moves. There was only one point at the absolute end where I just couldn't believe there was more. And I wasn't upset that there was more pages. It was just like, I can't believe that she's like, it's just so perfectly paced, and the length, it makes sense. Because it felt like maybe in the last 100 pages that like most authors would have sped to an ending, and she just lets this book have its time and exist, and it's phenomenal. Totally 5 stars. I knew this was going to be a fantastic book, and it was, and I knew that I was going to have a fantastic reading month, and I did, and so I'm just, yes. And then second to last, my penultimate book here is We Ride Upon Sticks by Quan Berry, which let me see what this looks like in the viewfinder. No, I still can't get this to be like as beautifully fluorescent-y pink as it really is in real life, and I don't know how I will ever be able to capture that for you guys, but it is beautifully pink. And this is this really quirky novel that I somehow destroyed the front cover of. How did I do that? I think I got bleach on it from work. Yeah, that smells like bleach. See that? I bleached my book. Anyway, so this is about this field hockey team in Danvers, Massachusetts during their 1989 season. It starts in the summer when they are at field hockey camp, and it goes all the way through to the end and when they're all adults. And they basically dabble in witchcraft to go from being the losing team to being a like championship contender. And there's so much attention to detail and outlining of just like 80s pop culture references. They basically make a deal with the devil, and it's written in this book that has Emilio Estevez on it. And so they're always kind of like, Emilio Estevez becomes almost like the symbol for the devil that they've made a deal with. And so they're always like trying to appease Emilio Estevez, which has you just dying with laughter that like Emilio Estevez is not the devil. But it's this really fantastic ride that is very detailed. And during the discussion for the Feminist Book Club, I don't know if I said that this was the book club pick for February for the Feminist Book Club. That's what I'm trying to say, which I am an ambassador for, and I will link in the description below and on the screen my rep code and stuff if you would like to try them out. But they pick a book every month, and there's 3 discussions. You can pick whichever one works for your schedule. So I finally made it to a discussion this month, and there were kind of mixed feelings on it. Overall, enjoyable, but it could have used a little editing. I really enjoyed all the detail, and it didn't bog me down, but I can see how you could feel bogged down reading it. So I feel like that's something to sort of know going into it, that maybe just kind of like let all the information wash over you and try not to get too bogged down in the details. But I thought it was a great story about learning to trust yourself, learning to believe in yourself, being on a team, power of being a woman, embracing who you are, finding your tribe, found family, finding yourself, becoming who you're meant to be. Just like this great coming of age story, and about friendship and about camaraderie, and how much times have changed but have also stayed the same. And Emilio Estevez is kind of the devil. So like I thought this was a really good time. I feel like certain people are going to absolutely love this. I'm a little mad that I apparently bleached my book. Anyway, and so then my last book is on this list because it was one of my anticipated reads for the year. And I don't know how I feel about it. And I want to start a conversation. So in the comments, if you have read To Paradise, if you've read To Paradise by Hanya Yanagihara, I need to have a conversation with somebody about this book, because Naomi was supposed to finish it so we could talk about it, and I don't know if she's ever going to do that. But this book, I still am sitting on the fence between this was 3 separate books that individually felt unfinished and could have been separated and been like an amazing something or other. Like somehow you could have almost made them a trilogy. Like something else could have been done to beef up all 3 narratives, because this book is broken into 3 parts. And there are 3 very separate timelines, time periods. Or is this a masterpiece? Like, I can't figure out if this is a hot mess or a masterpiece. And I'm literally sitting on the fence. I'm just sitting here on the fence trying to figure it out. And I think about this all the time, which is why it's on this list, because I can't stop thinking about it. But I also I don't know how I feel. And I need to discuss this with people. I wish this had been a book club pick so that I had all these people and we could just bounce ideas off of each other. I watched Eric Carl Anderson's review, and that didn't help me pick whether it's a masterpiece or it's a hot mess. I mean, the writing is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it's Hanya Yanagihara. It's absolutely phenomenal. I have questions about why she seems to be so fixated on queer men being sad or victims, or just that trauma or traumatized. I don't know why that's kind of, I've read 2 of her books now, and obviously A Little Life, that is a huge part of it. And there is some of that here again too, and I don't know what that fascination is, and it starts to get weird. I need to read People in Trees and see if it's in there too. So if that just keeps popping up, what is that? Can we explore that, Hanya Yanagihara? Do you have some trauma yourself you want to talk about? I really liked books 1 and 3. Book 2 was fine, but I didn't really care about the characters as much. It was interesting to sort of reading this story about Hawaiian culture and Native Hawaiians attempting to kind of, or wanting to get back their country after becoming part of the United States. I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but that kind of struggle to try to decolonize themselves, and ultimately how that doesn't really happen. Book 1 was really cool because it was this sort of Henry James-esque 1800s around Washington Square Park, which is so Henry James, and this family of rich people, but you're in this alternate history of New York or the United States, where the Northeast is this collection of free countries where you can be a woman and wear pants and be a lawyer, or you can be openly queer, or you can just be yourself. And it's this really more utopian-like society. And spoiler, nothing utopian is actually utopian, but it is probably the closest to utopia in this whole book. It's the time period that comes the closest to utopian, and then it sort of declines from there. And I don't know if this is a commentary on how no matter how evolved you are as a species or as a humanity, you're ultimately going to crumble and decline into part 3, where you're in this, like, you've had this series of, it's in this near future where you have this series of pandemics after pandemic that is just brutalizing the society and the choices that the government makes, especially in New York, on how to segregate people, how to quarantine people. What do these things look like? These camps that people get put into, the sort of systemization and totalitarian government that happens. I don't even know if any of this is making sense, because this is like an impossible book for me to explain, and I need to talk about it with somebody. So if anybody has read this, and again, I'm happy to discuss this in the comments. You can email me, you can DM me on Instagram, we can do a live show, but I need to talk about this book with somebody. Eric Carl Anderson, if you want to talk about this book with me, I will talk about this book with you. I don't know how I feel. I don't know. I don't know. So it's in my notable list because clearly it's something that is going to stick with me for a while I try to figure this out. Overall, it was a really great reading month. I'm looking forward to how things pan out next in March, because it's March 6th now. I've only finished 1 book. I have 3 going still. Not including things that I had going in January and February that I just haven't finished. And I'm just sort of drowning. I don't know what's happening. There's a lot of stuff happening in my personal life. There's a lot of stuff happening globally. There's a lot of stuff happening everywhere. And I may be crushed under just anxiety and doom and stress and everything, but we'll get through. Anyway. Breathe. Anyway, so I would love to know what you guys read in February that you really enjoyed. I'd love to know what you didn't enjoy. If you've read any of these, and I would love to know your thoughts on them. And yeah, otherwise, if you feel so inclined, if you enjoyed this video, if you'd like to see more confused book reviews like my review of To Paradise, please consider liking and subscribing. Every way that you interact with the channel really helps a girl out. Otherwise, I will see you guys in my next video, whatever it may be, because it's my channel and I can do whatever I want. Ciao. So just sit with me, talking to the night until the morning, building chemistry. I don't think I ever wanna go come closer next to me, trying to find another way to say this.